I'm going to talk about making a syrup today, a beautiful jade syrup or Qióngyù Gāo. This is actually apparently historically one of the first syrup recipes that was published, and afterwards syrups became kind of a popular thing for a while. This syrup is also known as rénshēn Gāo, which is ginseng syrup to nourish jing. So let's go through the slideshow and then I'll actually make it for you. Here's the original recipe. And so it had ginseng, it specified ginseng that came from Korea, shēngdì huáng and fúlíng, as well as honey. And there's some specific instructions, but the way they made it was so complicated, and we're going to make it the modern way, or I'll show you a slideshow of making it the modern way, but then when I actually do it, I'm going to use the Instant Pot. So we also are going to use different proportions because some of the stuff, like they want you to get the juice out of the dihuang, and we don't have fresh dihuang to actually do that. So, you know, the proportions are different, and plus look how much they're making. That's huge. We're going to make a smaller amount. The original text, after the manufacturing method, then it says some pretty interesting stuff. It says, take 3 spoonsful to make up 3 cups of this syrup and use them to offer sacrifices to heaven, earth, and the 100 deities. Burn incense and perform obeisances with absolute sincerity and an upright heart. And then the directions for actually using it yourself. Each morning, take 2 spoonsful dissolved in hot rice wine. But if you don't drink, you can dissolve it in plain hot water or like a clear broth kind of thing. Then what is this treat? This particular one, you know, enriches jing and supplements marrow. It has a sense that I think is kind of must be corrupted. It doesn't make sense, but I can't find an alternative version of this. So I don't know what that intestines transform into sinews. That doesn't make sense. But the 10,000 shen, the 10,000 spirits are complete. The 5 yin organs overflow. Marrow is solid. Blood is full. Your white hair turns black. It returns the aged to their youth so they can move like a galloping horse. They can eat several meals a day, although some of them may even forget to eat all day long, but they still don't feel hungry. They have thorough knowledge and good memory, so they don't start having cognitive impairment. They can still recite 10,000 words a day from memory, and their consciousness is free and natural, and their sleep is not bothered by dreams. And then it makes some really amazing promises. People up to 27 years of age who take 1 batch can live until they're 360 years of age. Wow, I missed that one. And so forth. You can read, you know, promises for different ages. If you're over 64, it's still, they guarantee if you take 1 full batch of that large amount that they described, then you could live to be 100. Also, if you divide it up and give it to different people, if someone only takes 10 doses, it cuts off addictions and desires. And if they cultivate good deeds done without bragging about them, you can become an earthly immortal. If it's divided in 5 parts, then those people who take it won't get abscesses. 10 parts can prevent people from taxation and consumption. You know, 10 different people. And they want you to, when you're making it, bathe and maintain sincere aspirations. Keep it kind of secret, only show people who are worthy. So you can see, wow, they really thought this was pretty amazing. And so here's what I'm going to do today, because I have to make an amount for a class I'm teaching, and I really don't want to make a huge batch. It takes more time, more resources, and this is not a formula that I'm actually taking, so I don't need a huge batch. So I'm doing a very small amount. You'd probably want to triple or multiply this times 5 if you're making it. So anyway, we have ginseng, shēngdì, huáng, and fúlíng, and a suitable amount of honey. Here's what Bensky says. This formula is in Bensky. You can look it up in Bensky. It enriches yin, it moistens dryness, it boosts qi, it nourishes blood, fills in jing, supplements marrow, turns hair black, rejuvenates, increases memory, makes you more alert in the daytime and more peaceful at night. Basically the same thing that the old book said. So this is a much larger batch. This is actually the first syrup I ever made. And so you can see the shēngdì, huáng, the ginseng, and the fúlíng. And so you add a fairly large amount of water and soak the herbs for a couple of hours. And then you would boil them for 2 to 5 hours, a very long time on the stovetop. Just simmer. You don't want to boil ferociously. And then you strain those herbs, keep the liquid, add water again, and boil again for another 2 to 5 hours. But you don't have to soak them after the first time because they're already moist all the way through. You strain it and you boil it a third time. So traditional syrup recipes are generally boiled 3 times the same herbs, but now you have a huge amount of liquid, and the syrup you want to be very condensed. So you have to cook down this huge amount of liquid, but by doing that, you've gotten every bit of essence out of the herbs that you're working with. So make smaller portions. Anyway, once you've got all the liquid, you need to strain it, and you need to really be careful in straining that there are no solids in it, because solids would make it go bad more quickly and make the texture not so good. And so my friend Henry McCann gave me the secret, which is if you just buy a cotton pillowcase, then the weave of that is tight enough that it's really good for straining. It's much better than cheesecloth, which, has more wider space, and so stuff could get through. And so I have a dedicated pillowcase for this kind of thing. And you discard the dregs after, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. After the third time, discard the dregs. But now you've got so much water, so you have to cook it down, but slowly, because you really don't want to damage it. And so one method is to put some wooden spoons between the lid and the pot, and then you simmer it low, maybe even overnight, if it's this large amount. And little by little, it evaporates and it becomes more and more condensed. After you cook it down to, a very small amount, then the liquid is pretty concentrated and may start to really look, thick. I had to put it in a smaller pot as it got cooked down. Here's the deal for basically most syrups. You want one part of your decoction that's very, very condensed and 2 parts of honey. And so you've now got 3 times the amount of the condensed liquid. And then you want to boil it down again, or simmer it down again. But I know some of you object to simmering honey. Ancient Chinese medicine had no problem with simmering honey. So if we're doing Chinese medicine, cooking honey is not a problem, even if some of you modern people find it shocking. But actually, I found what seems to really work with the Instant Pot. So I'm going to tell you about that later. You can just use slow cook, which is low enough that it's not actually simmering, but it will evaporate. Which is what we're trying to do, because if you add all that liquid to the honey, it's going to be thin. And honey is a preservative, you might know, but if it's too diluted, it's not going to preserve the syrup for a long period of time. So you need to evaporate some of the liquid to make it a thicker syrup and to make it able to last longer and to make each dose concentrated enough. And so we do have to evaporate, you know, basically we're trying to evaporate the water out of it. And then as the water evaporates, the herbal qi stays in the honey. So that's kind of the idea. And so it becomes thicker and thicker like that. And then you should, you know, put it in clean jars, especially if you want to keep it for a long period of time, if you make a big batch, and put a lid on it and label it and date it. And then you're basically done. But when it's time to take it, you would put a spoonful or two in a cup and pour hot water in it and stir it and drink it. Or you could just eat a spoonful of it. So that's the traditional way of making syrups in general. And now I'm going to show you how to do it with the Instant Pot, which is much easier. Hi humans, well here we are. I've got the ingredients for this syrup, this Qióngyù Gāo, which is 65 grams of shēngdì, okay, and 9 grams of ginseng. This is actual ginseng. You could probably use dangshen and, you know, double or triple the amount of dangshen, but it's a small amount of ginseng and I have it. And then 20 grams of fúlíng. This is the kind that's cut into little squares and not the curly stuff. And then we're going to need some honey, which I got today at the farmer's market. So those are the ingredients. What I'm going to do is put them in my Instant Pot. Here's the inner container for my small Instant Pot. And so I'm going to put these ingredients in. And then we need to add water enough to cover them and let it sit for a little while so that it can absorb and already be moist on the inside before we start pressure cooking it. So I've got filtered water and I'm gonna kind of want the minimum amount because otherwise you have to cook it down for a long period of time. But you want everything to be covered. So you also need a certain amount because it won't go up to pressure if you don't have quite enough water in there. So I'm going to let this soak for a couple hours and then I'll check and see if we need to add a little more water and then we'll start cooking. So it's night now. I've waited 4.5 hours soaking it because the little thing of ginseng still feels like it's not maybe moist all the way through, but on the other hand I need to get this done. So let's see what we have. I don't know how much you can see. There's the shēngdì and the other stuff floating around inside. The liquid has gotten very dark. Yeah, just from soaking. The ginseng here, this small piece of ginseng, you can feel it soaked somewhat, but it's still pretty hard. Still with pressure cooking, I think it will soften up. I did add a little bit of water because some water had been soaked up. And I think I'll add a teeny bit more, but we really don't want too much water. Okay, so the next thing to do is to pressure cook this. Okay, so we put this Instant Pot, the inner lid, the inner bowl is inside the outer one. Put the lid on, I'm closing the vent. I'm going to put it on pressure cook and I'm going to, add a bunch of thyme. There it goes. So I want to give it about an hour. Oops, well, 61 minutes is fine. Okay, and then we're just going to let it cook. It's almost cooked an hour. There it is. Okay, so I'm just going to let it cool off and release pressure at its own speed. I'm not going to release it myself, so that's called natural pressure release. And after that, we can open it up and strain it. So I just heard the little thing go down. So that means the pressure is off, and so I could open the lid at this point. It's still going to be very hot, but let's see what we have. You probably can't see it, but there's steam coming up. Okay, I'm going to get a few things and then we can see about straining it. Okay, I've got, ooh, that was a bad noise, a strainer. I've got a second inner pot for the Instant Pot. And I mentioned in another part of the video that a pillowcase is really good for straining. But I have such a small amount that I think it's a little big. So that's my standard straining pillowcase. This is a handkerchief. This has never been used to blow anyone's nose, but it, you know, is cotton. It's got a thin weave. So it's good for straining. So this is what I'm going to do. Hopefully I won't make too much mess. How hot is this? Not too hot. Okay. So here goes. A little hot. Okay. So, you know, this one needs cleaning out before it could be used again because it's got some herb grit in it. And then I've got it straining here. It's kind of a little hot to squeeze it out. Let's see. Okay, I have, this is really very nice. You know, it's that silicone stuff that's really good for insulating. So I'm just gonna squeeze it out. It's very dark, which is good. That means there's lots of herbal qi in it. But of course, with shēngdì huáng, it's gonna be a pretty dark color. This is hard work. If I'm frowning, this is hard work. Okay, it's cooled off. I've squeezed out everything I'm going to get. And since I'm not going to do it till tomorrow, finish it off till tomorrow, I'm going to pour it in a jar to keep it overnight in the refrigerator. Another reason for doing this is that I want to know about how much liquid I have because it will affect how long I have to cook it down and how much honey I need and so forth. So it looks like, hard to read. Oh, it's hard to read. In the daylight I can read it better. About 300, what are they, milliliters of liquid. Just in case you were curious, the shēngdì and the fúlíng were all broken apart, but here I picked out the little piece of ginseng, and it's, you know, all cooked on the inside, all dark on the inside and soft. And so hopefully we got most of the ginseng essence out of it. Okay, so tomorrow we'll finish. I have about, oh, I don't know, 300 milliliters. It's easier to read that size. I want to evaporate it down until it's about half of that. And the one way I found to do it, I could simmer it on the stove top, or I could put it on slow cook here and only cover it enough to keep cat hair from falling in. So that's what we're going to do next, is cook it down some. So this is a clean pot. I washed the one from last night from cooking the herbs and straining them. So I'm going to pour this in. Okay. Put the inner pot in the Instant Pot and put it on slow cook. Can I do this? Yes. And then cover it with this thing, or I could use a dishcloth and just let it evaporate. When, I'll measure again later. When it's cooked down, then we'll do the honey part. Yeah. Little sludge in the bottom. Maybe I should strain it again before I add the honey. Anyway, that's that step. Okay, so I have been doing this on slow cook, but like there are actually 3 settings. So the low setting of slow cook for about an hour and 15 minutes. And one of the ways you can tell how much it's done is I put this in when I first, started, and so we can see the line of how deep it was. And now if I, stick it in and pull it out, it's probably a little hard for you to see, but let's see. Yeah, it's way down. So I'm going to stop this. Where's the off button? Okay. And we're on to the next step. I'm going to strain it to get out any little bit of sludge. If I can, I'm going to strain it again. I'm letting it drip to get every bit of this. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little hot, so I don't have my little glove right now. Let's try and get it all through. So on my side, it says there's 150 milliliters of it, and I want twice that amount, about 350 milliliters of honey to mix with it. So I'm going to rinse out the pot and then come back and do the next stage. There's a benefit in having more than one inner pot for the Instant Pot, so I have 2 of these, so it's pretty easy to switch them out. Although cleanup is pretty easy for this. There's nothing burnt on the bottom. So I'm putting the new inner pot in, and I have 150 milliliters of this liquid. I don't know if you can see, which I'm going to pour in. And then I want 300. This only goes to 250, but I'll go a little higher than 250, this one. This is honey from the farmer's market. And it's going to be most of the jar. You don't really have to measure. This is an imprecise method. And it looks like this jar is exactly the right amount because it's up to 250 now, but there's still a bunch of honey pouring out. So, okay. Then I'm going to add this in. Get every last bit of it. So it took a while, but I scraped out all of the honey jar and the measuring cup. And so in here now we've got the honey and the condensed decoction, and I'm going to stir to mix. Now it looks all dark. The honey was a nice golden color, but now it's a dark color. So I'm going to cook it down further on slow cook so that the honey isn't heated too much. Let's see. Okay, and well, instead of putting that mesh thing on, I can use a cloth to cover it. There it goes. There it goes. And we'll be back when it's cooked down a little further. Well, it's finally done, I think. It's been on the slow cooker on the low level for about 2 hours, and it seems to have decreased in quantity. So I'm going to pour it into the measuring cup first for 2 reasons. One, I want to see how much we have left, and the other is because I'll be less likely to spill than if I pour it directly in. And the third is there's still some stuff in here that the warm liquid will mix with it and it won't be wasted. So let's see if I can do this without making a big mess. I have a little more than I thought. Won't all fit in. But I can still get the what was on the sides and the bottom of the bowl mixed in. Excuse me. Okay. Well, there's a good chance I'm going to spill it. Let me do something. Hold on a sec. Okay. Wish me luck. This measuring cup isn't always very good. Okay. So it's pretty much room temperature now, and it'll be even thicker when I put it in the refrigerator, but it's time to give it the test taste. So you can see the honey was golden and this is dark, so it does have its herbal Qióngyù flavor in it. And I'm going to take a spoonful, and you know, it's thick, but it's not as thick as the honey was. But maybe when it's refrigerated, it will be. Okay. So a spoonful or two, and then add a little bit of hot water. Give it a stir. Let's have a look. Okay, you can see then I've got this dark liquid, sweet. It smells almost like molasses, but it's honey and herbs. Yeah. It doesn't really taste like herbs, but you can see the herbs are in there. It mostly just tastes like sweet hot water. honeyish. So that's how it is. It's, you know, easy to take, just a spoonful, some hot water, stir. So making it takes a long time, as you saw, although it didn't take that much of my attention. So even though it took about a day, a full day from one day to the next, it was only a minimal amount of time that I had to actually do stuff. Um, because I used the Instant Pot. If I did it on the stove top, it would take a long time. Anyway, that is how you make a syrup with honey.